Rain hammered the black umbrellas like it wanted to drown the whole cemetery. The coffin hung suspended above the open grave, swaying just enough to make everyone hold their breath. Then it happened. A sharp metallic crack. The lid shifted. Only an inch, but something white fluttered out and landed in the mud at Emily Harper's feet. An envelope. Sealed. Her mother's handwriting across the front in that careful, looping script everyone recognized instantly. To my family, read before you bury me. Emily, 31, stood frozen in her too-thin black coat, rain streaking her face like tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed yet. She had flown in from Chicago at 3 a.m. after the call that still echoed in her skull. Your mother passed. Heart failure. Come home. Home. The word tasted like rust. To her left, Harold Harper, 63, broad shoulders still carrying the weight of 30 years running a construction company, stood like a statue. No tears. No tremble. Just that same tight jaw he wore whenever money was tight or a job was late. To her right, her older brother Derek, 37, gripped his wife Natalie's hand so hard the knuckles went white. Natalie, 35, always the soft one, was already sobbing loud enough to cut through the rain. Too loud. Too soon. Emily's eyes flicked back to the coffin. Margaret Harper, 58.
Gone in her sleep, they said.
Peaceful, they said. Except 2 weeks earlier, Margaret had sent Emily a single text at 2:17 a.m. If anything happens to me, don't believe them. Emily had laughed it off, called her dramatic, promised to visit soon. She never did. Now the funeral director, Mr. Ellis, small, gray, eyes darting, kept glancing at her like he was waiting for something. Harold kept checking his watch. Derek refused to look at the coffin at all. And that envelope lay in the mud between Emily's boots like a live grenade. She bent slowly, fingers shaking, and picked it up. The paper was damp but intact. Her mother's seal, tiny pressed wax rose, was still perfect. The priest cleared his throat, trying to move things along. Harold stepped forward. Let's finish this. His voice was flat, final. Emily looked up at him. Really looked, and for the first time in years she saw something flicker behind those steady eyes. Not grief.
Fear.
She tore the envelope open with wet fingers. One sheet of paper. Her mother's handwriting filled the page. The first line hit like a slap. If you're reading this, I didn't die of a heart attack. Harold has been poisoning me for 6 months. The world tilted. Emily's knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of the coffin to steady herself. And every single person at that grave heard her whisper the next 3 words loud enough to carry over the rain. They killed her. They killed her. The words hung in the rain like smoke nobody could wave away. For 3 full seconds, the only sound was water drumming on coffin wood and Natalie's sharp intake of breath, like someone had punched her in the stomach. Harold moved first. He lunged, meaty hand outstretched, trying to snatch the letter from Emily's fingers. Give me that.
Now.
Emily jerked back, clutching the damp paper to her chest. Her voice came out small but steel-edged.
No.
Derek stepped between them, palms up like he could still fix this the way he used to fix everything when they were kids. Come on. She wasn't well. You know how she got paranoid toward the end. Emily's eyes locked on her brother. She had spent most of her life looking up to that face. The one that taught her how to ride a bike. The one that promised he'd always protect her. Right now it looked like a stranger wearing Derek's skin. She forced herself to keep reading, louder this time so the wind couldn't steal the words. 6 months ago, your father started putting small doses of arsenic in my evening chamomile. He thought I wouldn't notice the stomach pain, the hair falling out, the way my heartbeat stuttered at night. But I did. I started saving the tea bags. I started keeping a journal. And when the symptoms got worse, I went behind his back to a private lab in Columbus. The results are with Mr. Ellis. They'll confirm chronic arsenic exposure. Mr. Ellis, the quiet funeral director who'd barely spoken since the service began, nodded once. A single, small movement. But it was enough to make Harold's face drain of color. Emily kept going, voice cracking on every other sentence. Derek knew. He bought the poison, rat killer from the hardware store on Route 7. Paid cash. I have the receipt he threw away. I have the recordings of the two of you talking in the garage when you thought I was asleep. She won't last past Christmas, your father said. You laughed, Derek. You laughed and said, then the company's ours free and clear. Natalie let out a wounded sound and dropped Derek's hand like it burned her. She stared at her husband as if seeing him for the first time. Derek? He didn't answer. He just kept staring at the letter like it was a snake that might bite him if he looked away. Emily lowered the page. Her whole body was shaking now, not from cold, but from the kind of rage that lives in your bones. She looked straight at her father. You poisoned Mom for insurance money? Harold's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out, and in that silence, Mr. Ellis cleared his throat again.
Soft. Polite.
Almost apologetic. Your mother gave me very specific instructions 2 weeks ago. She said if the envelope was opened at the graveside, I was to hand over the rest of what she left. He reached into his black coat, pulled out a small, clear evidence bag. Inside, a USB drive and a folded stack of lab printouts. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. Mr. Ellis met her eyes. She also said, if things went this way, I should tell you the police are already on their way. The police are already on their way. Those 7 words dropped like a second coffin lid. Harold's face twisted. First shock, then pure animal panic. He lunged again, this time not for the letter, but straight at Mr. Ellis. You son of a... Derek caught his father's arm mid-swing.
Dad, stop.
Everyone's watching, but it was too late. The small crowd of distant cousins and neighbors had gone dead silent. Phones were already coming out. Recording. Emily's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she unfolded the second page her mother had hidden inside the envelope. The handwriting was smaller here, hurried, like Margaret had written it while looking over her shoulder. I recorded everything. The USB in Mr. Ellis's bag has 6 months of conversations. Listen to file 14. That's the night you both celebrated my upcoming funeral. You toasted with the same whiskey you used to hide the arsenic taste. You said, 1 more month and the $1.2 million is ours. No more pretending to love the old woman. Emily hit play on the phone Mr. Ellis quietly handed her. The audio crackled through the rain, clear as day. Harold's deep voice. She won't last past Christmas. Company's saved. Derek's laugh. God, that laugh she used to love. Finally. Natalie and I can take the house too. Natalie staggered backward like someone had slapped her. You talked about killing my mother-in-law like it was a business deal? Her voice rose into a scream. Derek, tell me you didn't know. He couldn't even look at her. His eyes stayed glued to the mud. Emily kept reading, voice raw. I changed my will 6 weeks ago. Everything, house, company shares, savings, goes to Emily. Not you, Harold. Not you, Derek. I made sure the lawyer mailed the new documents yesterday. You'll get nothing but handcuffs. Harold finally found his voice, low and desperate. This is crazy.
She was sick.
Cancer. That's why she lost weight. No. Emily cut in, eyes blazing. You made her sick. You poisoned your own wife for money while she smiled at family dinners and kept your secret because she still loved you both enough to give you one last chance to come clean. She stepped closer to her father, rain mixing with the tears she could no longer hold back. How many nights did you sit across from her, pouring that tea, knowing it was killing her? Harold's shoulders slumped. For the first time in her life, Emily saw her father look small. Mr. Ellis raised his phone. I already dialed 911 the moment I saw Emily open the envelope. They're pulling in now. And then, cutting through the storm, came the sound everyone at that grave had been dreading, distant sirens rising like a judgment no one could outrun. The sirens screamed into the cemetery like they already knew the verdict. 2 squad cars skidded to a stop on the gravel path, lights flashing red and blue across the rain-soaked graves. 4 officers stepped out, hands on their belts, eyes scanning the scene like they'd been briefed on exactly what they'd find. Mr. Ellis raised his hand calmly. Officers, it's the Harper family. The evidence is right here. Harold tried to run. The big man who had stared down bankers and storm-damaged job sites for 30 years actually turned and bolted toward the tree line. He made it 3 steps before 2 officers tackled him face-first into the mud. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists with a sound that echoed louder than the thunder. Derek didn't even try. He just sank to his knees beside the coffin, shoulders shaking. I never meant. His voice broke into ugly sobs. Dad said it was just business. That she was already sick. I swear I didn't know how bad it was. One officer knelt, opened the evidence bag, and plugged the USB straight into a waterproof tablet. The audio file Margaret had labeled Final Proof began playing on speaker for the entire graveside to hear. Harold's voice again. Cold, calculating. Once she's gone, we sell the company, split the insurance, and Natalie and I start fresh in Florida. No more pretending. Derek's reply, just make sure the tea is stronger tonight. She's hanging on too long. Natalie collapsed beside her husband, hands over her mouth. You plan to leave with me after you killed her? The betrayal in her eyes was sharper than any knife. Phone records the officers pulled up right there on the spot showed texts between her and Harold going back months, plans for a new life. Once Margaret was out of the picture, she had known. Not everything, but enough. Emily couldn't breathe. She dropped to her knees in the mud right beside the open coffin, rain mixing with the tears pouring down her face. Her fingers reached through the gap and found her mother's cold hand. She squeezed it like she could still pass strength back through time. You fought them alone, she whispered, voice cracking. You knew they'd try to bury the truth with you, but you made sure the truth buried them instead. The officer in charge looked down at her, tablet still glowing with a final file. His voice dropped low, almost gentle. Ma'am, there's one last recording on here. Your mother said it was only for you. And it's going to change how you see everything that happened tonight. The officer handed Emily the tablet and earbuds. Your mother's last words. She said only you should hear them. Emily slipped the buds in with trembling fingers. The rain kept falling, but the world went silent the moment her mother's voice filled her ears. Soft, steady, exactly the way Margaret used to read bedtime stories when Emily was little. Emily, my brave girl, if you're listening to this, then you open the envelope and the truth is out. I found out in March. I wasn't dying of cancer. Your father started with tiny doses in my tea. Derek helped him. I recorded every conversation, saved every test, changed my will in secret. I knew they'd try to bury me and my evidence with me, so I made sure the coffin itself would expose them. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you from this pain. But I needed you to know you were never the problem. You were the only one who ever really saw me. I love you more than anything. Live your life free of them. You deserve the world I couldn't give you. The recording ended. Emily pulled the earbuds out slowly. Tears streamed down her face, but for the first time that day they weren't just grief. They were relief. Her mother hadn't given up. She had fought. She had won. Everything clicked into place with perfect, brutal logic. Margaret discovered the arsenic in March, gathered 6 months of proof, paid Mr. Ellis to hide the drive and documents inside the coffin lining, changed her will so every penny and the company's shares went to Emily alone. The heart failure was acute arsenic poisoning, later confirmed by the full autopsy and the lab reports the officers took away that same hour. No missing pieces. No loose ends. Just cold, documented truth. Harold and Derek were arrested right there at the graveside. 6 months later they both stood in court and heard the judge sentence them to 25 years to life for first-degree murder and conspiracy. The construction company collapsed under the scandal. Clients pulled out, banks foreclosed. The family name became poison in their small town. Old friends crossed the street to avoid them. Relatives stopped answering calls. The Harpers ceased to exist as a family the moment those handcuffs clicked. Natalie filed for divorce the next week and moved to another state. The last anyone heard, she was starting over with nothing but her own guilt. Emily stood up from the mud, wiped her face, and looked down at her mother's coffin one final time. You did it, Mom, she whispered. You gave me my life back. 6 months later, on a bright spring morning, Emily, now 32, walked back to the same grave alone. She placed fresh, white roses on the headstone and smiled softly. I'm free, Mom. And you finally get to rest knowing the truth won. She turned and walked away, head high, shoulders light for the first time in years. The secret in the coffin hadn't just destroyed the family that tried to kill her mother. It had saved the daughter, who was meant to carry on.